Got it?
Got it.
Roll.
Hello, actually good morning. We are pleased to have today Professor Michael Ursinus. He is one of the leading Ottoman scholars, Ottoman studies scholars in the world. He is in Tirana these days to participate in the in the 25th International Conference Committee of Ottoman and Pre-Ottoman Studies that is organized by the Sami Frasheri Institute and for sure with the entrusting and the support of CIEPO, which is the International Committee of Ottoman and Pre-Ottoman Studies. Professor Ursinus, I cannot introduce enough Professor Ursinus. He is a senior scholar. He actually comes from United Kingdom now, but he's spent recently his scholarly work in the University of Heidelberg in Germany. He has also served for a long period of time as the president of CIEPO, the International Committee on Ottoman and Pre-Ottoman Studies, which is actually the organization that is behind this conference these days in Tirana. It's a 5-day conference, and we didn't want to skip this great opportunity to have a conversation about history, about many experiences that historians like Professor Ursinus can have whenever they go and whenever they can discover whenever they visit, whatever they visit. So welcome, Professor Ursinus.
Thank you so much.
I'm not sure if I did anything into introducing you, but I know that scholars like you are modest enough.
You did a very good job.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. So how do you find this this visit to Tirana and this conference?
When we arrived late at night, we were stunned by the fact that the road leading from the airport into Tirana was far better than any road I've ever seen in England. It was only getting closer to the old town that, of course, things got a bit bumpier. Waking up the next morning and looking around from the hotel confronted us with the most modern architectural monuments imaginable. Modernity and tradition both dominating the center of the city left a really very impressive remark on us. Eager to explore more of the city, and of course if you are in a situation having never ever before been to a place but eager to explore the place, you would ask for a town map. And the hotel kindly provided me with a map, a cultural path through the city of Tirana, which I opened and very quickly thought to myself, how interesting what I see. And how interesting those historical and natural monuments right by the hotel. So I didn't need to walk any more than 50 meters to come across two particularly intriguing monuments. One being a bridge, one being a tree. A tree of an age that I would immediately relate back to the times when Tirana was literally founded by Süleyman Pasha Barcini.
Exactly.
Back in 1614 or thereabouts.
Exactly.
And this made me look at this map again to better understand what the situation here was. And I will perhaps be able to explore and explain a bit further.
So what was this tree? What tree you mean?
What I meant is, in particular, is knowing about this old, probably Roman, long-distance road between, on the one hand, Durres,
Exactly.
and Elbasan on the other.
Exactly.
And this road leading into Tirana and out of Tirana again, when you continue the line of the street, it hits exactly the place we are sitting now. Exactly.
Yeah, next to Thames Bridge.
Next to the Thames Bridge and next to the old, very old, ancient tree, which seems to be the only one that has survived from, I'm sure, 400 years back.
400 years.
Marking...
It coincides with the time of founding of Tirana.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I consider this as particularly important because other monuments, historical monuments, architectural monuments that once existed from the time of Süleyman Pasha Bauchi no longer exist, unfortunately. Like his mosque, the old mosque.
Yeah, it was destroyed.
Was destroyed in the war.
Partly during the Second World War
Exactly.
and then by the communists.
Yes. What reminds us of its position is the türbe.
Yeah, Kaplan Pasha Türbet.
Exactly.
The
We know
only,
where it was, but it no longer exists.
unfortunately,
His hammam, unfortunately, no
didn't
longer
survive.
exists. I would assume the bridge, the Thames Bridge, that we see now, was built in the 18th century.
Yes.
But it must have had a predecessor.
I mean, the one we have today probably has been built during that century. I mean, it's 17th or 18th century. But as a river passed by, probably it was
Exactly. So this
preceded by another.
long distance road from Durres to Elbasan, crossing the river Lena here,
Yeah.
must have had a crossing, a bridge to cross, even before this 18th century bridge.
It's quite interesting. How can you be sure that this tree is that old? As a scholar, you rely on certain criteria or insights, or
That's a very good question, and I try to explain as best I can, because having lived in England for such a long time, having seen so many of England's very ancient oak trees, I feel reasonably confident in saying that an oak tree, provided it is an oak tree and not a plain tree here,
yes,
of this shape and dimension and circumference, we would need 7, 8 people
yeah, to grasp it.
to grasp round the trunk. Trees that I've seen in England of this size would have been dated by dendrochronology. They would have been drilled to take a sample from the core, and then you could establish the exact date of a tree. Several trees in England have been dated in this way.
And they are conserved
And they are
served.
conserved, well protected, cared for, and sometimes they figure as natural monuments and are very much looked after because of their significance and their importance for understanding better what they represent. Now in this case, to see a tree that has survived for so long, and I'm pretty sure, given the size of it, we are talking of a tree at least 400 years old. This poses the question, how can this tree have survived for so long? Why would people not have cut it down at some stage? Even as a dead trunk, it would have provided firewood, if you like.
Exactly. Why didn't they do it?
People must have considered this tree not only a very special landmark, indicating the point where this long-distance road was crossing the river, the tree may have had some more significance for people, for the local people, as a sacred tree even.
Exactly. I mean, it kind of seems to have carried a meaning that is beyond the landmark
Absolutely.
role in a...
Definitely. It must have had that appreciation among the people that lived here to make it a tree that was meaningful to them, far beyond being a landmark to indicate a crossing from one side of the river to the other. I would not be surprised, say, if this tree would have been venerated, literally, which means taken as something near a sacred object. And it would now clearly, in our day and age, deserve being written about, studied,
Even studied, researched.
and declared not only a natural monument, but a natural and cultural monument of Tirana city.
So this is your call towards the authorities, the municipality, the
Yes.
institutions dealing with cultural legacy.
Yes, because if I'm not entirely mistaken, this is the last surviving object you can touch relating back to the foundation of Tirana as a settlement.
Yeah, much older than the bridge, the tennis bridge itself.
Contemporary with the old mosque of Süleyman Pasha that no longer
It
exists.
doesn't exist, unfortunately.
So it is a very special location and a very special object we are talking about.
Yeah, I hope, and we all hope, that the authorities will pay, due attention and why not even funds and care to the tree and to its meaning, actually.
And actually looking at it, being perhaps even two trees in one, or a tree that divided early on, to me already has a very special personality, I would like to
call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing comments. Professor, actually I don't want to miss the opportunity of having you here and ask you about many issues, because you, for sure you are for the first time in Albania, but you have been studying Albanians across the Balkans since 70s.
That is true.
And I came across a paper of yours that
Did you?
dealt with the Kaza of Colonia, which is, and a village there, Starje, which is quite famous. And we
That
know
was my
in
very
Albania.
first
Yeah,
scholarly contribution to the world, in a way.
even your first article, probably.
My first
your very
article.
first article.
Yes.
Amazing to come across it. So you have been studying Albanians and their, let's say, mode of life and whatever, their participation in the Ottoman Empire,
Yes.
in the social, political, cultural life, religious life.
Yes.
In Albania, there is a main tendency by the historians, by the academicians, to study history from a political point of view. So history is only something you have the winners, you have the conquerors, and you have the enslaved and the subdued peoples. So that is a Foucauldian, let's say, perspective to history. But we don't know much about culture, how people survived, how people lived, how they celebrated, how they, let's say, worked the arable lands. What was the way of living and stuff? How do you find this political tendency to approach history as a political phenomenon only, exclusively?
Yes, it's too short-sighted. It doesn't really pay tribute, full tribute, to the fact that, unlike the saying that the winner writes history, it quite often is also the loser, or the apparent loser, that goes into history as an object of traditions, of legends, of sacrifice, being remembered centuries after the events that led, for example, to the destruction of a kingdom, the destruction of a town, or just an unfortunate military encounter, say with Ottoman troops. The Albanian insurrections, those people who dared opposing, they were defeated, but their legends, the legends about these events, are still to be looked up, in print even. Because, referring back to the article of mine about Colonia, in the subtitle, the article refers to the year 1830, or around 1830, exactly, when there was such a case of a clash between Ottoman troops trying to subdue some unruly beygs of Albanian extraction in the area of Colonia, who eventually were defeated. But the legends about their defeat were recorded by a tailor by the name of Tsepenkov.
So not an Albanian, probably, based on the name or surname.
Either Vlah or Albanian, who had a good knowledge of Albanian. So he recorded the legends about the Albanian beygs finally having to give up their positions and retreat in or around the year 1830, about whom the people were telling stories long after. And Tsepenkov from Piligam collected these traditions in Albanian language, that he translated into Slavic and published in Sofia in a journal around the end of the 19th century. These traditions, local traditions from the Prilep Monastir area, were later republished in Skopje in the 70s, and I was fortunate to be around when this 10-volume publication of Marko Tsepenkov's collected works were available to buy. And I got myself a set of 10 volumes of this unbelievably rich collection, about which surprisingly little is known today. But I keep referring back to this collection, as I did for this article, because pages after pages and pages of legends about this one event can be found there, and many other things too. So one of the, for me, most exciting orally
transmitted
sources from the area in question, between, say, Prilep up to Debar and the surrounding districts, leading into Colonia, which attracted my particular attention because I found a document relating to the situation in Colonia shortly after this event, with some detailed information about the inhabitants, the number of inhabitants, Muslim and Christian, in this smallish district with about 30, 40 villages, which I believe I managed to show in a map, in a little map.
Yes, exactly.
Which my late father drew for this publication, because he was a draftsman, he was a cartoonist by profession, and he kindly offered me to turn my handwritten sketch into a proper map, which has been published in this journal for people to see.
And it was the first paper published by you, and
it was
you
the very
immediately were awarded a prize by the Ministry of Education, or
Ministry of Education of Germany. It was a federal prize. Wasn't meant for articles, but book publications. But my university mentors kindly submitted my article, irrespective of the fact that books were expected. And the jury apparently must have considered the way I combined Ottoman with Albanian and Slav sources into this one article as sufficiently interesting to award me at least half the price in terms of monetary value, but an amount which I would still consider a sizable amount, which gave me a platform to start off from, which was in a way life-changing, in the positive way.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've been studying in Macedonia, in Skopje.
Yes, for my doctoral dissertation. I went to Skopje on the invitation of a dear colleague of mine, the late Vancho Boshkov, who is from the area of Macedonia, or indeed was, from the village of Kavadarci, but later took the chair of Islamic studies and Ottoman history in Sarajevo. And on his invitation, I went to Skopje to dig in the Kadi Sigilleri of Manastir Bitola, housed in Skopje. And I stayed there.
So Sigilleri are I guess the books of the Qadis.
It's exactly. The Qadi record books.
Records, exactly.
I wouldn't say it only contains records of daily events. It more is a book into which incoming correspondence was copied, as well as outgoing documents. That is, documents the Qadis drew up were also recorded. So, forming a rather comprehensive record book, as the term says, of documentation of correspondence between, say, the provincial capital and this seat of a Qadi, who, of course, was busy corresponding also with the local bishop. And there are documents that should have gone into the Qadi's book that didn't, because the Qadi was happy to have the originals kept by the bishop. So if needed, the Qadi seems to have been able to refer to the bishop's archive if people wanted to see or needed to see what had been written. You know.
And also you're participating in CIEPO 25. It's the 25th conference of,
yes.
Let's say, the most prominent conference of Ottoman and pre-Ottoman studies.
Yes, indeed.
You've served also a long period of time as its president, and also you still hold a leading position. I mean, I see scholars there that they pay due respect to your scholarly contribution and role in this organization, in this conference. And your paper was eye-captivating while I was looking through the Book of Abstracts. And you're talking there about the Franciscan priests and monks who somehow played a role in
in
the war captives exchange and trades.
Yes. You're right.
Can you elaborate a bit more on the...
Yes, I'd love to do, because we would normally think of a world in which you have an Ottoman government and then Ottoman subjects, including, of course, religious orders, the friars from the Franciscan monasteries included, who would have to deal with the Ottoman authorities as best they can. Quite often complaining about ill treatment, but also regularly, and this is shown in the documentation still to be found in large numbers in the Franciscan monasteries, that not rarely, I wouldn't say regularly, but relatively frequently, the Ottoman Qadi would side with the Franciscan friars in the case of disputes with Ottoman officials complaining or accusing even the Franciscans of ill-doing. But the case being brought to the Qadi would quite often say there's no evidence.
Yeah.
So in this case, and this is the subject of my brief contribution, we have a case of Franciscan friars being, you could say, the agents of Ottoman officials, Ottoman military officials, acting on behalf of these Ottoman
officials, representatives,
fortress commanders, to look for some captives, apparently fortress commanders themselves, being taken captives in the course of the wars with Venice. Nobody knowing what their fate was. So first the friar, the chief friar from a monastery in the south of Herzegovina, was instructed to go out on behalf of the fortress commanders of Ljubuški fortress to look if he could find any evidence that these captives were still alive, which apparently he managed to do, coming back and being instructed again, now in a more specific way, now that their fate was known and the outcome so far was a positive one, that yes, they were alive, but unfortunately indeed kept by the Venetian troops in a nearby fortress that had recently been captured by the Venetians, perhaps as a revenge operation, because the Ottomans had just taken the fortress of Klis for themselves. But the Venetians, on retreating from the area concerned, sieged the fortress of Skradin, which is a little bit further north towards the mouth of Krka River, near Šibenik, the present port of Šibenik. And the friar involved was given a letter of safe conduct to be protected from any Ottoman interference in his attempt to go to a convenient place, crossing the border into Venetian territory and contacting the Venetian authorities about the release of these fortress commanders from Herzegovina, I'm sure, that were kept by the Venetians as captives, as prisoners of war. And the whole operation appears to have been a successful one.
And they succeeded, you mean?
They succeeded. And one of these captives later on became a high-ranking official in the fortress of Klis, Behlul Aga.
Behlul Aga, he pursued a career in fortress managing, it seems.
Yes. So Franciscans as Ottoman agents
So they played an active and proactive role in terms of negotiations and even, let's say, political relations to a certain extent between
sure.
both let's say, empires and
They were go-betweens.
policies.
They were go-betweens because they were the born go-betweens. Franciscan friars very often, if not in their majority, would be educated in Italy, certainly in that period, having had many contacts across the divide. Language and cultural connections were close anyway. So they were the obvious go-betweens between the Ottoman side and Venice. And apparently, as this one example shows, they could be successful partly because they were so well equipped as go-betweens. And my single case shows what needed to be done in order to be successful, and that is to have the full backing of the Ottomans and the full respect of the Venetians to get to their destination safely and successfully.
So it seems that you have somehow proved something that, let's say, counters a certain narrative, historical narrative, about the role of the religious minorities, or let's say the Christian communities and orders in the Ottoman Empire. What is this narrative, or if there is one?
You are absolutely right. You refer to a narrative that is usually quite bipolar. Here,
exactly.
The Ottomans, there, the Christians, or indeed, in this case, the Christian friars. History never works like that. The human factor comes in, the cultural factor comes in, the situation, indeed, the topographical factor comes in.
Even topography intervenes.
Indeed. So history never works without space. History works within space. And space, as we understand it, often is divided up into units that we call states, societies, whatever. But we must be aware that frontiers in those times quite often made a frontier society. A society that was used to frontiers, but also frontiers to be crossed, and benefits taken from crossing frontiers. Risks, yes, but also the benefits. So it seems that crossing frontiers was a rather regular occurrence, particularly for people who were, as I said before, linguistically, culturally, and of course in religious terms, go-betweens. They would not stand out, not stand alone, because they had their co-religionists on the other side. For the Ottomans, the Muslim Ottomans, it might have been more difficult. But for the Christian subjects, particularly the Franciscan friars, this was a relatively easy operation to, if need be, contact another monastery on Ottoman soil, a Franciscan monastery on Ottoman soil, or indeed contact another monastery on Venetian soil. And this is precisely what seems to have happened on a regular basis. It's very interesting also to see what mechanisms, what strategies were employed, say, by the Ottoman side to facilitate such crossing of frontiers. Because any administration would insist on a minimum of administrative framework for allowing, or indeed not allowing, the crossing of borders, frontiers. As a rule, on the Ottoman side, if you wanted to come into the Ottoman Empire from Venetian territories, you would have a supportive statement ready in your name from a military authority and the Qadi responsible for this particular area. So regularly, the people who come back quote an approved invitation, approved by a military figure and the Qadi.
The Qadi.
And if both of these were positive, no problem. Occasionally we get even more detailed accounts of such letters of approval, letters of invitation by Ottoman authorities, Ottoman people of influence, landowners, who had a say in regional, local society and in politics, who would then write more detailed letters of invitation to the Franciscan or indeed the Catholic bishop involved, wanting to enter the Ottoman Empire. And the tone of these invitations to come often are surprisingly, should I say, warm and inviting. I was struck by a few letters of this type I recently worked on that were issued by Ottoman fortress commanders, but co-signed by some important figures in their surrounding, or indeed they were issued by local families of influence. In this case, the famous Kopčić family, a Croatian noble family who converted to Islam from an early age, but preserved their family name ever since, who were influential, very highly influential, even on the highest level of the provincial administration, but also important landowners. And one of these landowners, who was approached by Bishop Marian to come back into his native country of Imotski near Split, and indeed to take over his obligations in the district of Medjugorje, Čitluk. He received such a letter of invitation, which I could have quoted almost verbatim. Says, "My dear Bishop, who might have told you we wouldn't like you to come? Of course we do. We never prevented any friar to come into our country and perform his duties. Your community is calling you to come. They recently had a case of locusts, of insects destroying their crops. So please do come and help them in this perilous situation. There's no need to worry. And we guarantee by our religion, the religion of Muhammad, that no harm will ever happen to you." This is the tone of letter some of the Catholic bishops received on applying to come back into the Ottoman realm. Yeah. So quite unexpectedly, perhaps. But why are we so surprised? It is that even we, as scholars and specialists of Ottoman history, sometimes do not quite understand the importance of frontier, not as an iron curtain, but frontier that creates a frontier society which allows
for
and sometimes even invites for cultural, linguistic and indeed religious exchange. a surprisingly pluralistic society, a surprisingly mobile society.
I mean, pluralism is quite tempting, I mean, and appealing to hear, but even mobility. Yeah. So, because we imagine the medieval and early modern period as a period of low mobility, let's say, or even lack of mobility due to a number of reasons, not only the infrastructure and the technology, but also the political divide and the animosity between the polities.
Yes.
But there was mobility, you say?
There was a lot of mobility on one level, and I'm glad you raised this issue, because we must admit that for some parts of society, for some sectors of society, mobility was just a term, not to be lived, because many of the peasantry were more or less tied to their soil for fiscal reasons. The fiscal authorities insisted on their being where they were recorded and staying where they were recorded. So when you look at this, the conditions of life for the peasantry, mobility isn't exactly the term that would spring to mind, but very much the opposite when it comes to the religious establishments like monastic institutions, the Franciscan order being very much, of course, an example of where even the Ottomans conceded that they had no fixed abode. That was their fiscal, in a way it was a fiction, but they kept to the fiction of Franciscans having no fixed abode in order to spare them a fiscal treatment like for other people with fixed abode. So they were in that regard considered from the Ottoman perspective legally as somehow between simple ordinary Ottoman subjects and foreigners, mustamin, protected foreigners, foreigners with a letter of safe conduct, aman.
Amana.
And so the case of Franciscans operating within the Ottoman Empire and, as I have shown, beyond, is a terribly interesting, highly complex phenomenon, very much, and certainly in comparison with the fate of the peasantry, very much singled out, very much, should I say,
a privileged, I mean,
yes, yes,
elite, let's say.
Indeed, very much also representing the degree of mobility that was not available to others. And I'm extremely pleased to say that thanks to the generosity of the Franciscan friars in Bosnia-Herzegovina and also in large parts of Croatia, giving me access to their immensely rich Ottoman holdings, numbering roughly at the figure of 10,000 Ottoman documents written in Ottoman Turkish, not even including those many hundreds, if not thousands, of Ottoman documents, that is, documents issued by Ottoman chancelleries, but composed in Slavic language.
Slavic language.
And written in glagolitic script called either Croatian Cyrillica or Bosančica. This this corpus of additional documentation is of highest importance because quite often issued by the lower ranking officials on the Ottoman side, again allowing insight into a sphere that the normal, the more regular documents written in Ottoman Turkish would not allow, because being too far bound by formula, by repetition, and indeed concepts of letter writing that were not longer binding when it came to issuing such a letter in Slavic.
Amazing. I mean, while listening to you, a natural question arises. What is there anything you want to, or any message you want to share with the youngsters who are mainly attracted and appealed by the highly paid technology business pursuits? Actually, what is your, if there is any, I guess you have an appeal to them and a call to them to pursue studying history, humanities, which are not that, let's say, well-paid professions?
That's a very good question, but a question difficult to reply to. On the one hand, we as the mentors of young students who have their lives ahead of them, we must not tell them there would be no problem. They would, if they only worked hard, they would all find a job. Far from it. We have to be responsible in saying that if you choose our subject, you run a risk, and you must be aware of that. Nobody will ever be able to guarantee you anything. But if you start early, and if you are serious about working hard on these various linguistic necessities that we can't deny, they exist. If you choose your subject prudently, so that it is not just repeating what has already been said, but try to explore new ground, and there is so much new ground to be explored. And at the same time, stay well in touch with your mentors, who alone might be able to be active and proactive on your behalf, making sure that either religious should I say well-minded people from the church, but also equally university rectors who understand that a subject like Ottoman studies that is considered to be part of the local, the national history, would give their universities a best-selling point in a way. If this can all be arranged or thought about in a way that universities wake up to the need of thinking seriously about having Ottoman studies on their syllabuses, creating the necessary positions for that, but understanding Ottoman studies as part of their own national history. Because in most countries, certainly like Albania, you've been under Ottoman rule, say, for more than
500 years.
Exactly.
Roughly.
So this period is part of your national history, even though, of course, it takes a while to understand fully that even this period was fully and comprehensively part of your national history. In many countries it is considered a period, a dark age, a period of suppression. A period where, say, in a way, nothing much happened. And a period which, in retrospect, had to be bridged by a very, very quick edifice of a bridge that would go back, say, from the 19th century to the 15th century or 14th century to link up with the glorious national past. No, these 500 years are constituting fully and wholly part of your national history. And once you open up the archives and once you study the documents relating to your area, written in Ottoman Turkish, yes. Written in Arabic letters, yes. But once the scriptural and language barriers have been broken, you will find it's your people, it's your names, your topographical, your place names, your family names, and the context. It will be nothing exotic anymore at all. But in order to get there, to have gone this long way, it takes a lot of effort. And it can only work when it is a concerted effort. Universities to wake up to the need to provide for such national history, but through Ottoman and Arabic writing. And students to get in touch with those who are influential in shaping the future academic world, so that they know which way to go and what to do first, and in what steps to approach their goal. It would need concerted action, which is always the most difficult of all.
Easy thing to do, yeah. Professor, thank you very much. I don't want to exhaust you more in this sunny, hot day in Tirana.
Another nice sunny day in Tirana.
Thank you very much. I don't know how to thank you. It's a great opportunity.
It was my pleasure.
We look forward to see you, more often in the future in Tirana.
That would be great, and I would really look forward, because I am almost fanatically a believer in the importance of geography, of space, because space allows us to look at local variation within this huge entity that we call Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, once studied in one area, is not fully understood, cannot ever be fully understood. Even if you then look at a second area and you start to understand this fully, having looked at these two, you still can't generalize. The beauty of historical work on Ottoman history, Ottoman society in history, is this incredible amount of local variation, regional variation, variation from one part of the empire to the next. Even within very small areas, you can see this difference reflected even in Ottoman practice. And who was best at exploiting the local variations, as always? The tax man. He understood best. We need to tax our people according to their local practices. So many very ancient practices have come into Ottoman fiscal practice, because the taxman doesn't want to make people avoid paying taxes by bringing too many new approaches. The taxman wants the peasant to be happy with doing what he always did. And so fiscal administration perhaps best reflects this plurality of ways about extracting revenue from place to place and place again.
So this opens up another major topic, which is another debate about the contribution or the role that the local tradition played, even in procedural lawmaking, but even in lawmaking itself in the Ottoman Empire, which is a vast area of scholarly discourse beyond that. So thank you once more, Professor. I'm sorry, actually, I think I have exhausted you too much today.
You don't. And you can see from my answer that I really would love to keep in touch.
Yes, we look forward
to an opportunity and your kindness
going on
to seeing you, to seeing Tirana, and to see some of the Ottoman sources in this country from close up in the future.
Thank you very much. We look forward to having you.